Today on Locked On Canadiens, how can Joshua Roy put himself back into the conversation?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1208 of Locked On Canadiens. We've got big news today. First, we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day, as you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And tomorrow, for our mailbag episode, we will be joined by my previous wonderful co-host, Scott Matla, also known as Scott Matla. He ceased being wonderful when he quit the show. Now he's just Scott. He can go back to being wonderful tomorrow. But it is our mailbag episode. We have a full episode of mailbag. We are going to ask him some Laval Rocket questions, obviously. Please get your questions in for Scott, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram. I don't know if you can DM us on TikTok. I have no idea how that works, but Locked On Canadiens on TikTok. Leave it in the YouTube comments, but lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com or Blue Sky is probably your best bet. Send us your mailbag questions for Scott Matla. All right. I've talked for almost 2 minutes before even asking my co-host how he's doing. Ian, how are you? And are you ready to talk about Joshua Roy?
Yeah, doing well. Yeah, let's get into this. I actually, it's good timing. I was at the Laval Rocket game this weekend against Hartford. I got the wrong Connecticut game because the next game they scored a bunch against Bridgeport and Arbor Xhekaj. Florian Xhekaj scored his first professional hat trick, which would have been really cool to see. But I got to see a 4-2 loss where Joshua Roy was noticeably unnoticeable, to put it bluntly.
We're going to talk about Joshua Roy this segment, and then later on, we're going to talk about more prospects. The Canadiens went over to Russia to visit some of their prospects, and then Bogdan Konyushkov has some words. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. All right, let's get back to Joshua Roy being noticeably unnoticeable. So it feels like Joshua Roy last year played himself into the conversation, and then this year promptly played himself entirely out of it.
Yeah, and he had some good numbers to start the season in the American Hockey League. But people who were paying attention were always kind of quietly saying that a lot of those points were in bunches. They were games where he had 4 points, 5 points, that sort of thing, and it wasn't a signal of prolonged success. The game I saw, I got to see him in person last weekend against Hartford, and I was excited to see him, especially his first shift. He got a scoring chance right in front of the net. He ended up getting stopped. The Hartford goalie was quite good in that game. That was really it for the night for him, though, which was disappointing in a lot of ways, because one of them being, he's one of the most, if not the most, NHL ready players on that roster right now, right? We know that he can be an NHL player. He's not at that level right now. But
we saw it. We saw an extended period of it last year.
Right. And the second thing that concerned me the most was that you would expect that he would be the one driving his line. And it wasn't. Laurent Dauphin, who has made his triumphant return to the Laval Rocket, is that guy. I found him to be a far more reliable player all game long than Joshua Roy. Joshua Roy was where the play was going to end every time. They were trying to get him in opportunities to be the one to put the puck in the net. But I kind of wanted more from him. I wanted to see him be the guy that line can rely on, because if he can't do that at the American Hockey League level, I find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to do that at the NHL level, right? And I know it's a small sample size right now. I'm not burying the player, but it's cause for concern that this player has not been able to string together a successful campaign last year with a good start to this year.
Right. And you are talking about the game that you specifically saw him in person. We're able to kind of see it closely, but over the course of the season, as you pointed out, it's inconsistency, right? Like he'll have a couple of games where there's a lot of points, and then he's not really a factor in other games. And I feel like in this situation, the player is able to control that, right? It's he needs to figure it out, and he needs to figure out what he needs to do to get himself back into the conversation because he's very capable of it, right? Since he was drafted, since the season immediately following the one where he was drafted, he became a success story, right? Everybody was looking at this guy being like, I can't believe he was fifth overall. I can't believe he was fifth overall. Again, the following year, you saw that. You saw him play with Connor Bedard. You saw him come to the AHL and then the NHL last year. And he did what we expected him to do. He rose up and grabbed the occasion. So we've seen a regression in him this year. And it's a clear regression in him this year. And if he can't hack it at the AHL level, the guys you look to make the NHL, when you're watching them at the AHL level, they should be wildly outperforming everybody else. They should not need to rely on mostly career career AHLers that occasionally, due to injury, got called up to Montreal, and it was a great story or whatever. He should not need to rely on those guys to drive the play. He should be taking control of the game. He should be electric, and he's not, right? And again, that's not to say that if you bring him to the NHL, that's translatable. We saw that last year, but he was an NHL player last year. He wasn't electrifying. He wasn't, what we were seeing in the Q or in the AHL, but he was able to put it together. So something's wrong, whether it's conditioning, whether it's preparedness, whatever it is. Joshua Roy needs to pull up his socks for, I don't know if people still say that. I feel like that's like something grandma. I'm very, very old right now. But he needs to pull up his socks, buckle up, whatever it is that you want to say, and figure it out and get it right, because he is in danger of playing himself out of the future of the Montreal Canadiens. He's going to be a guy that's going to suck, because he's going to be a guy that, if he's not careful, he's going to be one of those guys that have so much promise and then end up getting traded from team to team to team to team, where they could have been so much in Montreal. They could have succeeded in Montreal. And then years from now, we're going to see him on a Toronto team giving away the puck to Montreal and them scoring in overtime in the playoffs. We don't want stories like that anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, kind of. That one ended with Montreal scoring a goal in the playoffs. Right. So I mean, that's if that's the arc we're on, I'll take it.
Yeah, but it's like you could do that, or 2 to 3 years from now, you could be scoring in the playoffs in the Montreal Canadiens uniform instead of doing that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't want it to make it seem like, this is my only viewing of Joshua Roy, and therefore, that is what it is. We saw him in the preseason. We saw him, he had a couple games up in Montreal. The reason I was really keyed in on him is Scott Matla texted me and said, hey, can you watch him tonight? I need someone to look at him with new eyes, because I think he's been, I believe the word Scott used was ghostly. Like he just hasn't been, you haven't noticed him.
Yeah.
And that can't be a thing for a player like Joshua Roy, especially in a game like that against Hartford, where they really could have used a goal from him. They could have used some offense from him. And the rest of the team was going. They didn't play poorly, Laval, in that game. They outshot Hartford by a ton. And they were almost in it towards the end. They came back late in the third. But, they really could have used him in a game like that. And I think he's, this team is kind of constructed around him being a guy that can provide offense.
Yeah.
And he couldn't on that night. And it seems like a lot of the bad games that Laval has, a lot of their losses, he's unable to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that I do have access to Laval games, like on my screen, or like I haven't actually gone to Place Bell except for the PWHL, but I do have access to Laval games. Am I watching every night like Scott is? No, but I am watching, right? And we're not seeing what we want to see out of this guy. It's really just, he's capable of more because you've seen it. You saw it for an entire year. It's not like you saw it for 20 games and it never came back. You saw it in the Q, and then you saw it in the World Juniors. Again, yes, you are playing with Connor Bedard. That does make a huge difference. But you saw it in the NHL as well, right? Like, he was literally in the conversation the entire time. We were penciling him in for lineups, not just for this year, but for the contending years as well. We were like, what are they going to do with him? They have too many guys. How are they going to fit him in this lineup? Like, we were like, how are they going to make space for this guy? And now it looks like they won't need to. And that's really sad, because not only is it good to have an abundance of players who can play in the NHL and play well in the NHL, but it's also a great trade chip. He's not only hurting himself in terms of making the NHL team, but he's also hurting his own trade value in terms of getting a fresh start somewhere else. So he really kind of needs to figure it out. And the Rocket need to push him. Like, the organization as a whole needs to push him. Like, if he needs some help with anything, if he needs to see a sports psychologist, if he needs to work with any one of the development coaches or skills coaches, and it's not a lack of skill. It feels like just a lack of energy, a lack of reflexes,
Motivation.
a lack of
Yeah.
motivation. Like, he's not on the ball or
Yeah.
on the puck, I guess. Since we're talking about hockey.
The last thing I'll say here is you mentioned trade value and Bedard in your last little bit there. If I was Chicago, I'd be at least interested in reuniting those two players,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. I'm not an insider, but like, if Chicago's looking to turn this over, and instead of playing Bedard with guys like Nick Foligno and Corey Perry and Taylor Hall, you play him with a contemporary, a guy he can actually relate to. I wonder if that's a better fit.
Maybe it could be, but again, he's hurting his trade value. So maybe Canadians talk to him a little first to figure it all out. But in the meantime, we want to talk a little bit about some more prospects. It's a prospect-heavy show, and we're going to talk about the Canadiens and Ivan Demidov next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on PrizePicks, I'm eyeing the hockey board, looking at Jack Hughes for more than 4 shots on goal and Artemi Panarin for more than 1 assist. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. All right. Today is Prospect Wednesday, I guess. We're talking a lot about prospects, and the Montreal Canadiens have made their way over to Russia to talk to 2 of their prospects. I believe it was Nick Bobrov along with Kent Hughes and Vinny Lecavalier, right? So if this was Buffalo, Terry Pagula would be on that trip as well.
Yeah, where's Jeff Molson on this?
Yeah.
He's slacking.
Jeff Wilson, yeah, he's not interfering with hockey operations. What's going on?
Yeah, they went really, and I think they only ended up speaking with one of their prospects, in Ivan Demidov, and that becomes another story that we'll get to in our third segment on Bogdan Konyushkov. But they went to talk to Ivan Demidov like they had planned to. We'd been hearing rumblings of that for a while. Roman Rotenberg, the coach of SKA St. Petersburg, they had some conversations Roman Rottenberg posted on Telegram. I don't know what Telegram is, but I found it. He basically
Telegram
just
is like if Twitter was secure.
oh, cool. Yeah, that would be neat. Anyway, essentially thanking them for making the visit. He mentioned that it was a long and challenging journey to the Ska Arena, which I imagine coming from North America, it probably is very difficult to get to anywhere in Russia. So, that's the fact that they're doing this to go see Ivan Demidov tells you what they think of that player and what they need from him. But the rest of it was basically just kind of, boilerplate. What I did think was funny was in this post, it says Montreal is the oldest and most successful NHL club in history, and their stadium was previously the world's largest ice hockey venue before the Ska Arena opened. Like just taking a nice jab, I think anyway, very, very subtle at the Montreal Canadiens on that one. Like
I don't
you guys
even
think
know.
you're big, I'm bigger than you.
I don't even know if it's like the jab at the Montreal Canadiens or maybe it was like a government mandated tweet.
Yeah. No, it might have been.
Like he
Look,
can't not do it.
I think the main point of their conversations were, why the heck are you not playing Ivan Demidov? We need him to be playing hockey.
Yeah.
And
that's
I don't know.
entirely fair.
It is fair. What do you think the Canadiens can do? Like that was my question here was, okay, so you talk to him. What'd you talk about?
Yeah.
Like what we would like him to play more. He would probably counter with, we would like him to sign here. So like we're at an impasse, it would seem. Yes. What I think will happen out of this is we'll see a couple of games where Demidov is higher up in the lineup and is playing more. And then the second something goes south, he's right back in the press box or on the fourth line playing, a minute 35 every night.
Yeah.
I just think that's kind of the song and dance we're going to have to do the rest of the year.
Yeah. And the thing is, the good news is he's close enough to coming over next year, right? Like, I don't think that they're going to leave him there for 2 years doing that. And that conversation too, I do think that, you're going to do what you can, you're going to lobby, you're going to be diplomatic, you're going to play the game, you're going to play the politics game, et cetera, et cetera. But I think part of the strategy here is also just going to reassure him. We know the situation is not ideal for you right now. We know you're making the most of the little you're getting, because he truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like he's not getting enough ice time, but like hang in there. We're still believing in you. You're still in our conversation. Like we still believe you're going to be able to attain this potential that we see in you. Kind of just, basically just encouraging him and just kind of trying to keep him motivated, because, and the thing is, like what I feel like is like, this is just motivating him to rush over to North America as soon as humanly possible. That's literally all this is doing. It's quote unquote punishing him. But who's the one who ends up losing out? Like, you could use him more this season and benefit yourself until the end of this year, or you can just be petty and try and this bullying is not going to work, because he's not going to sign there. He wants to come here. He's been vocal and open and honest about that. And the Canadiens are going to bring him over the second they can. And so I think part of this is also just kind of not necessarily massaging his ego, but you know what I mean? Like he's motivated. He doesn't need motivation, but just kind of validating him. I think this is a validating him trip / conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I also just think I don't know. I have a hard time seeing how this changes. There's, not the meeting with Demidov. That makes all the sense in the world, right? Like you should meet with your prospects, something we're going to talk about in the next segment. But like the conversation with Roman Rottenberg, I just, for what? Like, I have a hard time like wrapping my mind around like what they hope to accomplish with that. Not that it was a waste of time or anything, but like what leverage do you have if you're the Montreal Canadiens to try to negotiate more ice time for your prospect, their player? That's the difference here, right? He's Montreal's prospect. He's contracted in the KHL right now. Yeah. Montreal, Kent Hughes can kick rocks for Roman Rottenberg for all he cares, right? So I really like, I'm like, okay, cool. I hope he was nice. Like, I hope you had a nice conversation, but I just don't know that that's, I don't know what to make of it.
So I think it partly is kind of a version of kissing the ring. Really,
yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's like a PR attempt to kind of ingratiate yourself with to this person. But there's also like the arena measuring contest right there. Like that tells you exactly how this is going to go. Like,
yeah, it feels like a space race. We're like,
yeah.
no, ours is better, right? Like it's Cold War type
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and then they have to build the set, for a backup for a fake moon landing in case the real one doesn't work.
I almost said you can borrow the Americans, but that moon landing happened. Don't get me twisted. The moon landing's real.
But you know what we're talking about, right? So like it does feel like, and then they can go to Ivan Demidov and say, look, we tried, right?
Yep.
We had this conversation, we're advocating for you. We're in your corner. You're our guy. We're 100% behind you. That gives them the opportunity to do that at the very least, right? Like you can try with the ego measuring, like butt kissing kind of conversation, but that's not going to work. Whether it works or not, we don't know. But even if it doesn't work, you can go to your prospect and say, we have your best interest at heart and we are advocating for you. Look, we traveled all the way here at this time in the world, for you.
Yeah, we cracked the door open. You need to kick the rest of it open. Is what
exactly.
I think that message is going to be to Ivan Demidov.
Yeah.
And I like those odds if I'm Ivan Demidov because that player rules. Like he's going to be able to execute on that if he's given the opportunity. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. But it doesn't just all rest on Ivan Demidov. The Canadiens do need a full lineup, a depth lineup. However, they might not have gone to see one of their depth prospects. We're going to talk about what that's about in just a moment here on Locked On Canadiens. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, you can win big and tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I'm going to say that again. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and us. All right, before we get into our third segment in which we are also going to do trivia, let me remind everybody of our contest. It is the end of the year. Christmas is next week. After our Christmas break, we are going to do a draw from our listeners, and Ian is going to part with his precious picture, 13 by 11 picture of Carey Price that is signed by Carey Price. It has an authenticity, whatever it is, certificate. It is signed by Carey Price, and all you have to do to enter that is, because it is Spotify Wrapped Season or any podcast app that you have, wherever you consume our content, send us a screenshot showing us we are one of your top listens / watches / whatever. If your podcasting app does not have that, what you can do is you can send us a screenshot of a recent review that you have left for us on any of the other platforms, and enter that, and that will give you an entry into this contest, and you have up until our Christmas break to do that. We'll have a little bit more information tomorrow on what next week is going to look like, but we will be here for you with content as well. We're obviously taking a little bit of a break for Christmas. But yes, and you can send that to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. I've also been getting them on social media on Blue Sky and on Instagram. That's fine too. Just make sure that I responded to you saying that your entry is counted. And if not, just send me a reminder just to make sure, because every time I send that, I'm writing it down. And then we're going to do a random draw, and one of you is going to get that picture. And we've gotten a lot so far. And honestly, truly, every time I get one, seeing that we are in your top 5, my heart just grows 10 sizes, right? Like we've seen a few where we're your #1, and that really, like, it truly makes me want to cry, especially around this time of year. Like, I really appreciate you listeners. I know, Ian, it's only been since August, but I know you appreciate them just as much as I do.
Absolutely. You guys put up with all my crap. That's great. You guys let me do some of the dumbest things I've ever done. And
but it's so
some
fun.
of you like it.
It's so fun. It really is a fun time, and I know, like, the Canadians haven't been that good, but we promise we're going to try our best to bring you good content every episode. However, we have a Montreal Canadiens prospect that is not super enthralled with the front office at the moment.
Yeah, so with all of the talk around the Canadians sort of making a beeline to Ivan Demidov at any kind of opportunity they get, Bogdan Konyushkov is being a bit of a squeaky wheel. And that's not to say that he's doing the wrong thing. I think he's doing what's best for Bogdan Konyushkov and his role potentially with the Montreal Canadiens in the future. For those who might not remember, 20-year-old right-hand shot defenseman, went 110th overall in the 2023 draft. He's put up some good numbers in the KHL. He's a right shot defenseman who I think skates pretty well as well. So, I mean, the Canadiens can use a guy like that in their pipeline. And I think he knows that. The problem is that as soon as he was drafted, he signed a few months afterwards. He signed a 3-year contract in the KHL with Torpedo. So, I think maybe the Canadiens looked at that and said, "Well, we're not going to see you for 3 years. Why do we need to go talk to you now?"
We can just call you on the phone,
which they haven't done either, according to Bogdan Konyushkov. So I'll read the quote that was in the media from him. "There's no specific development plan. 2 or 3 months ago, they wrote me and asked how I was doing. They also sent video clips of one NHL defenseman playing. Other than that, there was no communication. I don't have such close communication with them as with Ivan Demidov." So he sees what's happening with them rolling out the carpet for Ivan Demidov, a player who has at every stretch said he's coming over here. They don't really need to be doing that with him, to be quite honest. And Bogdan Konyushkov's looking at it like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, why am I not getting that treatment? Like, I'm over here too. I could, maybe they could Mitch Koff me and have me over on humanitarian, whatever they called it. Whatever it was, I don't even remember. They got, they essentially they just voided his contract. Like, why couldn't that be me down the line? Am I giving the Canadiens too much crap for this? I feel like I'm on Bogdan Konyushkov's side. Like, what gives? Why am I not getting this treatment?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that he doesn't need or require at this stage in his career as much communication as Ivan Demidov, who's like literally like he's about to step on a plane as soon as he possibly can, right? And he's a few years away, if he's going to come over. But I do think there needs to be more than what's happening right now. There's a line between like what's happening right now and Ivan Demidov, and the Canadiens need to be closer. They need to be closer to the Ivan Demidov part of that continuum. With Konyushkov. And, it could just be that they think, he's not ready. Like maybe the closer he gets to being ready, then they're going to start having those conversations with him. I do understand he's 20 years old. I do understand, he's doing well, but it doesn't seem like he's necessarily that close in their plans. Right?
No, definitely not. And I think that's fine. I do think though that there's always this boogeyman of players coming from the KHL not wanting to come over here. It seems like Bogdan Konyushkov, even though he signed that contract in the KHL, we know they sign those contracts and they don't really want to, but they do it. It seems like through his actions now that he's like, what gives? I want to be a Montreal Canadian. Like what? Like, well, I want to be that.
Yeah.
So like, I wonder if I called him a squeaky wheel earlier. The saying is the squeaky wheel gets the oil or something like that, right? Like, I hope the Canadiens take this as an opportunity to talk to him, be like, hey, sorry, we left you out of the fold. Let's talk more often, right? Like, yeah. I hope that can only be a good thing that comes out of this if that's the path the Canadiens go. If they do the hockey man thing of being like, no, now we can't because it looks like we caved. Like then you lost. Then you lost a player potentially here, right? Like that can't be a thing that they do.
Yeah. So one of the best pieces of career advice that I've ever heard was if you work hard and you do well and you do good things, don't just sit there waiting to get noticed. if you want a promotion, you have to like reach out and grab it, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that equivalent, right? You got to have that conversation with your manager saying, I'm looking for what's, how I can grow. I would like more responsibility. Whatever way you couch I want more money and a better title, like whatever way you say, the
Right.
professional way to say that, right? So like Bogdan Konyushkov needs to find the professional way to have that conversation with the Montreal Canadiens, to put his hand up and say, can we do this? Because like, I don't know necessarily if calling them out is the best way to get their attention, but
No.
it probably got their attention.
When you're 20 years old, it seems like the only way to get their attention, though.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Like if I was in that spot, I'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah. But if I were him, I would call them and hope nobody's listening to me and say, I want to be in the plans too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just keep me in your plans. Just whatever the professional way of giving me more money and a better title is for the NHL players or for future NHL players.
Right.
All right, it is time for our trivia.
Yeah, so in honor of Patrick Laine, the question yesterday and the question today will be themed around Montreal Canadiens hat tricks. The question yesterday, who had the last Habs hat trick against the Buffalo Sabres? And Laura, you got this when we logged off the call. What do you have?
It was my second guess. My first guess was Brendan Gallagher, which was incorrect. My second guess was Max Pacioretty.
Correct. Max Pacioretty on January 31st, 2017, a 5-2 win over the Buffalo Sabres. See, good things can happen for the Canadiens over the Sabres. I've been hearing so much about how like Buffalo gives them fits, and like I keep looking back, I'm like, kind of, but like Montreal gets the better of them from time to time.
Except Max Pacioretty has done a heel turn and is now apparently an enforcer on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, whatever. Now all of a sudden he's like, wait, I'm 6'5". Anyway, I'm over it. Today's question. Since the year 2000, Montreal has scored 48 hat tricks in both the regular season and playoffs. Trevor Linden had the first of the new millennium, and Patrick Laine, of course, has the latest. Montreal, in that time, from the year 2000, torched one team for 5 hat tricks. It's the only team that Montreal has 5 hat tricks against. It is the most Montreal has against any team in that span.
I know this one.
Who is that team? If you know the answer to this, put it down in the comments below. We'll pin whoever gets it right. Unless it's Laura. We can't pin Laura. That's not something we can do here.
I'm also not going to put in the comments to give the listeners a chance. So really quickly, since the year 2000, so out in the new millennium up until now, which team do the Canadiens have the most hat tricks against? That's the question.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. They have 5 hat tricks against this team. Who is it?
All right. Perfect. Awesome. And so before I log off and ask Ian if my answer is right, do not forget that tomorrow is our Scott Matlin mailbag episode. So before 7 p.m. Eastern time, please get your mailbag questions in lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, the YouTube comments, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. We're Locked On Canadiens everywhere. Do not put it on Twitter. We are not checking that. And if you sent your contest entry to Twitter, please send it to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Twitter is a horrible app with a horrible user experience. I am not on there. I will not be checking. So if you want your contest entry counted, send it to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Also your mailbag questions. In the meantime, you also know that you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe everywhere. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on whatever podcasting app of your choice is. Tell your friends. Leave us reviews. Right now, reviews will get you into a contest as well. And you can find us all over social media, like I just mentioned, Locked On Canadiens everywhere. You can find me on social media as The Active Stick. You can find Ian at Maybe It's Ian. I'm going to thank everyone for listening, and we're going to talk to you with Scott tomorrow.